see the feed on Facebook?
I'm trying to pull it up now.
Yeah.
My internet's a little slow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, everyone. I'd like to call this special board meeting to order. Please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood.
Present.
Mrs. Cole.
Present.
Ms. Ballard. Mrs.
Present.
Mrs. Raper.
Present.
Mrs. Rare.
Present.
Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
to the
United States of America.
and to the republic for which it stands,
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I even have a flag.
All right, so next on our agenda is the adoption of tonight's agenda. So I would like to make a motion to have two changes made. So the first part of the motion is to include item 1.05, which is opening statements. After that will be item 1.06, which will be temporarily suspending resolution number 72-20, section C, and this is so that we can allow in-person public comment. May I have a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Everybody seconds? Any discussion on these agenda item changes? Please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood.
Yes.
Mrs. Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Ballard.
Yes.
Mrs. Raper.
Yes.
Mrs. Rare.
Yes.
All right. So next we go to item 1.05, and these are our opening statements. So I just would like to begin by saying or giving my thanks first to my fellow board members for what we're about to discuss and do tonight. I'd also like to thank our administration for all of the hard work that they put in into getting this plan together. I would also like to thank our staff members who assisted in that process. And then I would like to thank our community for the feedback that they have given. So, Norwood is one of those communities where we may not agree on everything. At the end of the day, when we decide on a direction to go, the community rallies around itself to pull together and get the job done. That's Norwood. Couple of housekeeping items I want to mention in this opening statement. For those of you who are going to speak into a microphone, when you have a mask on, please make sure that you pull the microphone a little bit closer to you so that it's properly picked up. And then I know that it may be a little difficult for the sound of your voice to carry to the other side of the room. Just keep a mindful effort that it may require, I don't know if you may be a soft speaker, just keep a mindful effort that it may just require a little bit more projection for those present in the room to hear you. With that being said, I'm going to open the floor up to any of my other colleagues who would wish to make an opening statement.
I think that sounds great, Brandon.
And I have Amber who wishes to make an opening statement.
Thank you, Brandon. I appreciate the work that you already gave about having the community rally around. I just want to really emphasize that we need employers to truly support the efforts the board is going to go forward. I mean, not just our community, but many. I really do want to personally put out a tweet that whatever plan one of your involved in, whether it's Norwood or another district, that you support your employees need to be flexible in the week's time. It's going to be an adjustment for all of us, and we really need our employers to support our parents as we work to get this schedule moving forward.
All right, any other opening statements? So I've just been notified that apparently nobody can find the link to this meeting.
I can't either.
So before we get to the next round or the next agenda item, I may just call a slight recess to make sure that we can actually be seen. Technology is great until it doesn't work.
I'm going to restart it.
Okay, I think now we're back up and running. So those of you who are watching, the only thing that you have missed was the call to order, the roll call, and the opening statements that were made. We'll have to make sure that the opening statements do become part of, if you want to go back and watch it after the fact, you can. So I'm going to move on to item 1.06. And 1.06, I'm going to make a motion temporarily suspending resolution number 72-20, section C. This is to allow in-person public comments. May I have a second?
I'll second that.
Is there any discussion on this temporary suspension? Please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Bowden?
Yes.
Mrs. Raver?
Yes.
Mrs. Greer?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So now we're going to move into section 2 of our agenda, which is the hearing of the public. And so I'm going to read the policy. To further improve the communication between the community and the board, time shall be allotted at each regular or special board meeting to hear public and/or representatives of school-related organizations. Public participation at committee meetings is limited to those invited to speak on specific issues. Each person addressing the board shall fill out a form listing name, address, and the agenda or non-agenda item and hand the form to the board president. Each speaker will have 5 minutes to address the board. No more than 15 minutes will be devoted to any one topic unless a majority of the board votes to continue the discussion. Speakers may offer such objective criticism of school operations as concerns them. However, the board will not hear personnel complaints of school personnel or complaints against any person connected with the district. Concerns and comments about individuals should be brought to the attention of the administration. Now, in light of the emails that have came in through our public@norwoodschools.org address, I would like to make a motion that we extend the 15-minute rule so that a way we can hear all comments on this one subject. May I get a second?
I'll second.
I'll second.
Everybody seconds? Any discussion on
I
this?
tried to stay quiet that time.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Ballard?
Yes.
Mrs. Rayburn?
Yes.
Mrs. Rarick?
Yes.
With everybody passing, we will hear all comments as related to the agenda item of our back-to-school plan. With that, we do have one speaker who is here in person to address us. And so would Paige, Jesse, please come up to the microphone. You have 5 minutes.
Hello, thanks for having me tonight. I also sent an email that's much lengthier, but I thought it was important to come in person. So first I want to thank you for all of the hard work the board has done, as well as the staff and administration. I know that you are, as often happens in schools, over and over again, dealing with the bad decision making and failures in other parts of society, and are now trying to do the best you can with the resources that you have. So with any complaints or stresses or worries I may have, I truly know you all are doing the best that you can given where we are. So just 3 main things I want to highlight. First, I was disheartened at the previous committee meeting when just the 5-day-a-week or completely virtual options were presented. And I was truly relieved towards the end of the week when the new plan was proposed that was based off the county alert levels. So my only one would implore to please do not go back to the 5 days no matter what option. And then additionally to consider having the blended model for both orange and red warning levels, not just the red warning level. I know there are other districts that are looking at the blended for those 2 middle options. I think Lakewood Schools and Cuyahoga County is doing that. So just something to consider as, again, in the interest of safety. Second, obviously I know the district is working on a comprehensive fact page, document, something that will address, I'm sure, the many questions you've gotten. My only encouragement with that would be if you could give the staff and, the families and communities a deadline that you're setting for yourselves. As we're trying to make plans out of it, we'll see when they see, but if we had a date, say July 31st or August 5th or something like that, that we could plan for, I would love to have a date. And then my third point that is my biggest concern beyond the safety measures that I've already suggested is testing. Studies show, and we know that beyond asking kids to keep a mask on and stay away from their friends and wash their hands, beyond that, our biggest defense against the coronavirus is increased testing. I would love to have every staff member tested before the start of the school year, within a week, 2 weeks of the start, as well as to increase the infrastructure. I'm sure this obviously is working with, obviously beyond the schools, with the health departments. But to have staff tested regularly, maybe weekly or at least bi-weekly throughout the year, so we can prevent as much spread as asymptomatic and pre-symptomatic folks. Obviously, waiting until there's a fever or waiting until there's a sore throat, you have a lot of lag time where you're, potentially infecting entire classrooms, families, that sort of thing. And that's the most of my biggest concerns. And again, thanks for all your hard work. I know it's hard for everyone in this challenging time. So thanks.
Thank you so much for your address to us. I think we all appreciate it. Next, we're going to move into hearing the emails that were sent in to the public@norwoodschools.org email address. I believe there were 8 of them, maybe 7 now that Paige's email that she sent in. All emails that were sent in are going to become part of the minutes and become part of the public record of this meeting. So even if an email, in order to recite it, takes more than 5 minutes and it gets truncated, all of the statement will become part of the public record. So I just want to make sure that that's known. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Mrs. Cole, who will read the emails from the public comments.
Okay, our first email is from Kelly Chirambalo, and I apologize if I don't get your names correct. Her subject is questions on back to school plan, and her email states, why are masks not mandatory for younger grades? The idea is that wearing a mask protects others, not you. So if I send my child to school wearing a mask, but the other students in the class are not, that it negates the full safety benefit. Will we be told the amount of students complying with masks? For the full-time virtual curriculum, how many hours per day will a student have of coursework? If we start off in person and then the school needs to shut down, will we be put into virtual learning or the same distance learning model we had in the spring? Why are the students not being temperature checked as they enter the school? Will there be a staggered start and release schedule to decrease crowds at drop-off and pickup? Okay, the next email is from Selena Andino, and her subject is special board meeting back to school. Miss Andino lives on Indian Mound. She says, good evening. After reviewing the plans for return to school, I would like to address some concerns. The first option will change based on color codes for the county. Families who do not work in the home will be forced into situations that could jeopardize their income and the safety and education of their children if the level warrants at-home learning. Essential workers have to keep everyone safe and allow everyone else to stay home. As a result, we do not have many options to change schedules if there are options at all. Children will be left in the care of someone else or home alone. They will be thrust into online learning with the new program without a parent to help. Will there be special consideration for these students? Or are they being set up to be discouraged and fail right at the start? How much advance notice will be given to allow families to find childcare if the level forces them to stay home 3 days a week, then again go back to 5 days a week, or stay home 5 days a week? Families need to be informed of every change in an adequate amount of time. Let's see. The second option is all online, which I, for one, feel forced into choosing. This is the option that will allow for some form of consistency. With this option, are students expected to complete their work during school hours, or can they complete everything later? Do they have the option to start and stop and go back if they need help and their parents won't be home for hours? If the student fails because they just don't learn well online, will they be held back and have to repeat that grade again? Kids will be punished because their parents can't stay home. And I'm going to skip some personal things that she mentioned in here. But she just points out that every family has different needs. So we'll leave that one there. The next one is from Tina Jordan. The subject is back to school plan. As the governor has removed Hamilton County from the watch list for level 4, I am advocating for a later return date to school. This school system used to go back the day after Labor Day, and I believe that would give the numbers time to catch up so that we could potentially be at a level 2. We owe it to our children to give them the best start possible. The next email is from Tanya Cook of Indian Mound. She's a Norwood graduate, parent of 2 Norwood graduates, parent of 2 Norwood View 5th graders. I'd like to start by saying I do not envy the position you are in. I cannot imagine how difficult it is to make decisions that are safe for our children and teachers while trying to keep parents as happy as possible. After the first plan was announced for all kids to re-enter school for a 5-day week, I was not pleased at all. I very much appreciate the effort to come up with this new plan, and on the whole, I am much more comfortable with this new option. I do have a few ideas and concerns. Currently, it would be at a level 1, yellow, 5 days, all students. Level 2, orange, 5 days, all students. Level 3, red, AB groups 2 days a week. Level 4, purple, all remote learning. I adamantly believe Level 2, orange, should also be AB groups at 2 days per week. When we move down from Level 3, red, to Level 2, orange, this is going to be a critical move that will be very easy to push back to a Level 3, red if all safety precautions and guidelines in our community are not followed. I feel that Hamilton County as a whole will teeter back and forth on that line between orange and red. As soon as the kids are allowed back to school 5 days a week, when we drop to orange, people will view that as a sign to relax. The community relaxing on safety precautions at the same time our schools move from 2 days a week to 5 days a week is a recipe for disaster. I feel that Level 2 should be viewed as a cushion level, allowing schools and community to keep everyone safe and to keep those numbers down. Doing this would allow us a transition where I think reaching Level 1 is more attainable and sustainable. Of course, our goal should be to get kids in school as many days a week as possible, but this must be done in a very thoughtful, gradual way. Rushing down the ladder on a plan too quickly, I fear, will just end up in a shutdown. Once we are able to move down to Level 2, orange, this would be a great place to cool our engines, let our children and teachers hit their stride with the schedule, buckle down our safety precautions, and achieve a Level 1 that will stick. I would also like to address the 3-foot minimum spacing listed in the plan. I understand while being on a 5-day plan, more distance may not be available due to the number of kids in class. But while on levels that allow for AB groups, I think it should be stated that space be maximized to at least the 6 foot suggested by CDC guidelines. Concerning entering Level 4, the plan states, only if state or local regulations require a school closure, we would shift into remote learning and more details would be provided. I would like to hear more details on this. Would there not be an occasion where iDistrict might need to make this decision for itself rather than wait for a state or local shutdown? For example, an uptick in cases in Norwood, not necessarily Hamilton County, to be proactive when cases are on the rise, but action is not being taken by the state. Norwood City School District has had an excessive amount of classrooms that had to be placed in quarantine. Thanks for your time and consideration, Tanya Cook. Next is an email from Jen Wackett, Reopening Schools Plan. Hello, my name is Jennifer Watkid. I'm a Norwood resident, mother of a Norwood student, and the wife of a Norwood teacher. I have sent the following concerns to the Norwood School Board in an email, but I will copy and paste that email here to make my comments known to the public at large. These comments are sent with the Norwood School Board as the audience and addresses them as such. Hello, Norwood Board members. May I first state that the job you are doing and what you are being asked, I'm sorry, I just scrolled. May I first state that the job you are doing and what you are being asked to do must keep you up at night, and I'm so thankful that you're putting all your energy into reopening our schools with the safety and educational endeavors of our youngest citizens and our invaluable staff at heart. I know your decisions are difficult and can seem impossible at times. It is with that thought that I write you to look into a policy that is currently being discussed within your board. I understand that the district is considering to implement a 3-foot distance when a 6-foot distance cannot be implemented due to spacing issues. I have read the plans that you have put forth with a pretty keen eye, and I noticed that in the hallways near lockers and congested areas, a masking mandate will be implemented. I applaud this direction and agree with it. Not only does it follow CDC and Ohio distancing guidelines, it also follows those given by the AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics. As a parent of a Norwood student and the wife of an educator, it makes me feel as if our schools have levels of protection in place for all those within the building. My concern from some of the other guidelines pertaining to masking, and that is where I'd implore you to revisit these particular guidelines as currently drawn in this plan. Whereas the state of Ohio has a 6-foot distancing guideline, the AAP suggests that 3 feet is acceptable when distancing and 6 feet cannot be maintained. That guideline is not being completely understood to my understanding upon reading the Norwood Schools' current reopening plan. The guideline, when followed as according to the AAP, states that 3 feet of distancing can be implemented when no masking is required. To me, this means that masking must be mandatory at 3 feet of distancing, and if masking cannot be implemented, then 3 feet of distance is in a safe and recommended manner cannot be achieved. It is very important that guidelines are followed, especially when it's sourced in the back-to-school plan as a link. I am sure I'm not the only person who has wondered about this confusion. I am sending the link as provided in your school plans and the copy-paste of the AAP guidelines that I have read and am questioning in relation to the opening of school. If this could be addressed, I think it might help parents to make a more educated decision when sending their children to school, and I'm making the assumption that it is something the concerned educators would like to understand better as well. Copy and pasted from the paragraph, physical distancing measures. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, parentheses CDC, recommends that schools space seating/desks at least 6 feet apart when feasible. In many school settings, 6 feet between students is not feasible without limiting the number of students. Evidence suggests that spacing as close as 3 feet may approach the benefits of 6 feet of space, particularly if students are wearing face coverings and are asymptomatic. When carefully looking at the wording of this suggests that 3 feet might be almost as good as 6 feet when students wear masks. This would strongly suggest that classrooms that cannot maintain 6 feet of social distancing should make masks mandatory, or a new classroom with the capabilities must be found. If masking cannot be made mandatory, a classroom with capabilities must be found if masking cannot be made mandatory. Parents will want to know soon before they make their decision if their child can be safely distanced if masking is not mandated within the schools. The second place in the AAP guidelines state a similar approach is in the second section I've copied and pasted direct from the link provided in your school reopening plans. This is regarding PPE and face coverings. When developing policy regarding use of cloth face coverings by students or school staff, school districts and health advisors should consider whether the use of cloth face coverings is developmentally appropriate and feasible, and whether the policy can be instituted safely. If not developmentally feasible, which may be the case for younger students and cannot be done safely, for example, the face covering makes wearers touch their face more often than they otherwise would, schools may choose to not require to use physical distancing measures can effectively implement it. I want to make sure that I was understood, which is why I highlighted the parts I did. Those are the parts where I could potentially see a dangerous oversight. I think it's important that parents understand whether or not their child will be in a masked room or an unmasked room. And I also, if this plan has a chance to make those two designations based on the space that school has available. Are there larger classes that could be rooms where unmasked students, either for health or personal reasons, could choose to go unmasked, and smaller classes with masking mandates are available for parents that want to send their kids but only under a masking guideline? Please entertain this idea, as well as looking into the guidelines that are currently being offered under this current draft of the Norwood Schools reopening plans. Thank you for doing this very time-consuming, energy-driven, and difficult work. I appreciate it as the spouse of a Norwood attendee and educator, Jennifer Wackett. Okay, we have two more. The next one is from Amy Dwyer, and her subject is classroom environment. Hello, my name is Amy Dwyer. I live at 4137 Forest Avenue. Although I am not a Norwood parent, I'm a Norwood resident and a first grade teacher at Norwood View. Providing an inviting classroom environment has always been an important part of preparing my classroom for the children that will be a part of my classroom for the upcoming year. Traditionally, this includes rugs for class meetings and learning, cozy nooks for reading that may include pillows or bean bags, and so on. In the midst of the pandemic, does the board have guidelines on how teachers can and should set up the classroom environment as teachers prepare to welcome children back to school? Thank you for your hard work and consideration during these difficult times. Sincerely, Amy Dwyer. And our last one, I'm sorry, I don't know if this is Ellison or Allison, but Hunter, on Montgomery Road, mother of 3 Norwood View students and concerned parent. And her subject line is return to school plans during pandemic. I think the new plan based on the health rating is a much better plan instead of having to pick between two extremes. I don't know if I will ever feel comfortable sending my kids back to school, but this plan illustrates the school board's conscious effort to keep our kids safe while attempting to get them back in the classroom where they belong, while acknowledging the seriousness of the changing environment around us. Please make a point in staying mindful of the lag in cause and effect we receive from this virus due to its unfortunate incubation period. I know this plan might inconvenience more parents at times, and I feel for them, but this pandemic inconveniences everyone in some shape or form. This is not normal life as we know it, and we need to look before we leap and jumping in to return to that. I appreciate the school board taking the economic struggle of parents into consideration, but the main job of the school is to focus on the kids. Learning needs to be done safely. Lastly, there needs to be much more emphasis on hand sanitizer in the classroom. I know soap and water is the better choice, but the reality is that children cannot be trusted to do this correctly, let alone at all when not supervised. Posters reminding students to wash their hands in the restroom will not be any more effective now than they were before, and trust me when I say that too many kids do not wash their hands. I would be happy to donate as much as I can get my hands on to the classrooms, but I think the best option for the school board is to contact some of the local breweries that have been selling gallons of hand sanitizer the last few months and form a partnership now. I'm sure as school time draws near, you will start to see shortages in your wholesale vendors' cleaning supplies availability. Now, before I send this email, I would like to thank you for your time and also like to ask that you look to the person on your left and to the person on your right. Our students do not deserve any less distance between themselves than you give yourselves today. Ellison Hunter. And that concludes the emails.
All right. I would like to thank everyone who took the time to send an email to address us. I think they were all valid concerns and things that we should, contemplate as we move forward. Next, we're going to move into item 3 of our agenda, and that's the Education Committee report. Mrs. Rarica.
Okay. So we have our back-to-school education plan, and I would like to make a motion to adopt our plan.
So there's a motion on the table to adopt the back-to-school plan. Can I get a second?
I'll second.
So now that we have a second, we can go straight into the discussion. And before we start off with the discussion, I would like to turn this thing over to our superintendent, who can give us an overview of the revised plan for our work that we're going to do in the next few minutes.
Thank you, President Edward. We have a brief PowerPoint because we knew as, maybe I need the clicker up here, I have a feeling. Thank you, Christina. Obviously, we're following the governor's guidelines, and I did want to mention here tonight, in addition to mask, facial, sanitizer, we have ordered gallons and gallons of all of those items. We're also looking at plexiglass coverings for all the desks for cafeteria use, like you see here today. And in fact, we have sample plexiglass on the various kinds of tables and desks we use in our schools. So we certainly are taking safety very, very seriously. I did want to remind people we did survey families back in June, although gosh, that seems just like ages ago now, the way things change daily and weekly. And we do know that 57% of our parents definitely wanted to get back in school. This is our current plan. As you see right now, level 1 and level 2, you're back at school 5 days a week. Level 3 is remote learning, and level 4 is a completely virtual situation. I think everyone has seen that, so let's move along. Okay. Again, I don't think many people are focused on level 1 or level 2 because right now we are not in those levels and may not see those for quite some time. So I wanted to really focus on level 3, what that would look like. In order to get the small class sizes and have 6 feet of distance, we need to divide all the children into 2 groups. Group A attending on Monday and Tuesday, and Group B attending Thursday and Friday. This allows us on Wednesday to do deep cleaning. Also, the teachers to have office hours, also post all the assignments that the children should be doing when they're not at school in class. Now, of course, we're trying to figure out how to divide up parents. Initially, we're going to focus in on the parent's last name, not the child's. That way we are keeping families together, because we know that's important. And if you are to get separated, please call us, because we have no intention of separating families. So we're trying to divide up the district A to K, which would be your A group, L to Z would be your B group, based on the primary parent's last name. So that would be a very good idea to go into our final forms and see who, just update your information. Please make sure we have an email address for you, because it's really hard to communicate if we can't email you. See who's on that first line as the primary parent. Is it the mom or is it the dad? Because that'll determine your A-B group. Now, we are keenly aware that this is just district-wide, divides the children in half. But we also know Mrs. Smith may have all the children at the beginning of the alphabet, so she might have 7 in one group and 17 in another. So obviously, we're going to call families and switch them to make sure you've got 2 groups of 14 or 12, actually, 2 groups of 12, and not that lopsided kind of situation. So this is just the very first blush to try to get the district divided in half. And then we'll go back and make changes. And if you have a work schedule that you're better off in the Monday, Tuesday group, please let us know. We will switch you. We know we have to be flexible, just because we know this is so difficult and hard on all of our families. So just let us know if you have an issue. Michelle Witt is our enrollment person. We've asked her to be the contact person. Her email is registration@norwoodschools.org. And she will list everyone's requests so we can make those changes and get back with you. Now, I wanted to make sure that everyone understood, because it is hard. This is the blended learning option level 3 that we are in. So you see the teacher 2 days, and the other 3 days you are doing lessons that the teacher has either posted or sent home, projects they have sent home with you. This is similar to what we did in the spring. It was very teacher directed, where the classroom teacher that you see 2 days a week will be in contact with you. Usually on Wednesdays we'll have office hours, so it's teacher directed, the teacher that you're in class with those 2 days. But we're going to make it more highly structured. We understand in the spring, because we were thrown into this so quickly, you know, with 48 hours notice, we were calling, we were emailing, we were using Google Meet. We are purchasing a learning platform. It's like a one-stop shop, so when you go to it, you don't have to look elsewhere. Because I know board member Raven brought that up, that she was having to look all over the place for her children. So we're trying to make that a much more user-friendly type of situation. Now, this is different. Oh, well, if a level 4, the remote learning, obviously then the teacher you were seeing 2 days a week will be doing remote lessons. The big difference is on the next slide, the option 2. And I can see how there's confusion, because when we're doing the remote learning, you're seeing the teacher, but you're doing online. This option with Edgenuity is completely independent. The child works at their own pace. The teacher is the learning coach, really meaning the parent is the teacher, making sure the child logs on, does the assignment. There will be a teacher that you can reach out to with questions, and if there's assignments to be graded, they'll grade them, and they'll give your child their quarterly grade. But it won't be the same kind of teacher doing reaching out and touching and sending stuff home. This is a very independent program. The pluses would be you can work at your own pace and move through the lessons at your own pace. There would be no change throughout the year. There'd be continuity, because if we had to shut down and shift, you keep right on moving with the Edgenuity program, while the students in the teacher 2 days a week plus the remote would suddenly have to make that switch. So that's really the difference. Edgenuity, independent, work at your own pace, consistency throughout the year, but you're not going to have the same level of interaction that you would in the 2 days a week and then the other 3 remote with the teacher. And I hope I'm doing a fairly good job of explaining that, because it really is confusing since both of them have that online piece. But one of them is 100% online. The other is 2 days a week with the teacher, 3 days a week remote. Let's see. And with the Edgenuity Independent program, we really do need our parents to have the children have a daily schedule. I know one of the emails said, well, can they work in evenings? If that's your schedule, that is fine, because it's independent, self-directed, work at your own pace. We are asking, if you commit to one program or the other, you need to be in there for the semester, because it would be very difficult. Let's say 150 families choose the Edgenuity completely independent program. Then we set up our A and B groups with small class sizes. All of a sudden, if you want to start coming back after 3 weeks, that really will cause us major logistical issues, because we already have our classes worked out, our staff hired. So we're saying at the semester, after winter recess, if you want to change, we could do it then, but we can't have people moving in and out. Okay, I do want to thank all of, these are all the teachers and administrators in the district who have been working. You know, the plans have changed weekly, but working through this, coming up with ideas, trying to give us the very best start we can, helping us look and decide on all the kinds of safety equipment that we are buying to make our start of school the safest that it could be. So I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions, because I know those 2 options are very confusing. And I think our next steps obviously have to be sending out a questionnaire to our families, basically asking, do you want to be in the blended learning, which is 2 days a week with your teacher and 3 days online doing the assignments the teacher gave you, or do you want the completely independent Edgenuity? So once we get that information back, then we can start looking at our groupings and our class sizes to keep them really small, with 50% of the students who remain after we take out the Edgenuity students. So really, we're going to have to spend the next month doing that, trying to get all the classes situated. We plan on getting the questionnaire out next week. We're requesting that everyone responds by August 3rd, because we do need time then to figure out what everything is going to look like. So we will do robocalls to remind you, please let us know which option do you want, and then we'll send more detailed directions. But those are the 2 pieces I wanted to make sure were clear in people's mind. The independent, it's almost independent study, self-paced Edgenuity, or the 2 days a week with the teacher and the 3 days online with that teacher contacting you. And I think I'm going to stop there and take any questions or try to clear up any misunderstandings.
Sure. So I think the best way to proceed forward with this is we'll do a round with the board members where we ask the questions that we want answered to get some clarification on some of the things. Once we have those questions answered, if any board member then wants to make tweaks or changes to the plan, there'll be a series of sub-motions to the motion on the table for us to address one at a time. So with that, I know Alice has a question.
At least one, just because the last thing was Edgenuity. I did have a parent ask so I understand why it would be really logistically horrible if they choose Edgenuity and then want to go back in the classroom, and we shouldn't do that. But what if they choose to go into the classroom and then they feel unsafe and they'd like to switch to Edgenuity? Can they do that?
I think we can accommodate that. That's an easier accommodation. But we do have to look at staffing, because right now we also have the situation with our staff, some of whom have medical conditions. So we're trying to match up the staff who are going to be our online and Edgenuity teachers and our in-person teachers. So if we have massive movement, that causes the job assignment of the teacher that might change in the middle of the quarter. And that's why we're saying we may have to have breaks where you can do that, because we just can't let people move in and out, because then we'd have too many teachers in the Edgenuity independent program and maybe too few teachers in.
So like when, like maybe every few weeks, it's okay, if you'd like to change, now's the time kind of deal?
We will try to be flexible, but if there's massive movement, you can understand how we have to stop, move other children around, try to rebalance classes, and move teacher assignments. So that's the only reason we're saying we like to be flexible. But if it causes teachers to have to change jobs after a month on the job and go to a different assignment, that could be a problem.
And then, so you are saying there will be Norwood teachers involved with the Edgenuity to some sort of degree?
There will be a teacher of record. Typically, if you look at like some of your online programs out there, you know, there is a teacher you can get in contact with, but it's not going to be the same level as the teacher you see 2 days a week. They're there to answer questions. If when you're going through Edgenuity, there's assignments that have to be graded, they'll grade it and get back with you, the parent and the student. They'll give the child the grade at the end of the quarter, but it's going to be a lot more independent. You can't be expecting that teacher to do the lesson, because Edgenuity does the lesson and the teacher's more of the backup.
But they're available for contact?
Yes, they're available for contact. Yes.
That's good.
All right. Any other questions for clarity? I think Amber has a question. She's trying to unmute herself.
She can email it to the public email account.
All right. Amber, while you're trying to do that, if we can't get unmuted for some reason, if you want to type your question out and send it to the public account, Debbie can grab it from there and ask it as you work through that. Is there any other questions? Oh, okay, you got it. Wonderful. All right.
Okay, so in terms of questions, with regard to the AV schedule, I'm assuming that regardless of an AV level schedule, or if we're at tier 1 with the 5-day-a-week schedule, we will already have an AV plan established, so we know which students need to go where, if we have to suddenly switch. Is that true?
Yes, right now we would be in the A, right now since we're in the red level, we're on looking at the AB plan.
I'm just saying regardless,
Yes,
even if tomorrow we were only magically in tier 1, we will already have a plan in place to separate an AB group so we can immediately implement if needed.
yes. Yes. And it's based on letters, it's based on the parents, the primary parent's last name. We can divide A to K, L to Z.
Okay, and then you mentioned the office hours. Is that going to be broken up, like A is in AM, B is in PM, or will this just be an open during school hours type thing for any student at any time?
That would be the Wednesday. The teachers would be available on Wednesday for office hours, and I'd have to leave that up to the individual teacher to work it out with her class. I hate to make it so structured that a parent who's working maybe would miss it.
So I have a question on the option 1, grades 3 through 12. It says wearing a mask and or face shield is highly recommended at all times. So it doesn't say that it's mandatory. That being said, I feel like our parents are split on face coverings. It seems like some of them think it's necessary, some of them don't. Could we consider the AB schedule broken up by that preference?
We could. Yeah, I think you're right. You're referring to the study where the survey, parent survey, we saw it was about 40% in either side. Yes, we could do it that way too. People who are want the mask, people who don't, we could divide up by that also. That's an excellent suggestion.
Well, I bring it up because it says here that grades 3 through 12, it's highly recommended, but there is confusion among parents because it's now mandatory in Hamilton County.
Well, see, yes, when we put this plan together, those were the governor's words.
Right.
And that's what's so tricky about all of this.
Yes.
The governor puts this out, then Hamilton County enacts something different. So we keep changing sentences in here. But that was what the governor had said when we put the plan together. That's what it was.
So do we know, I mean, if we were to go to school tomorrow, do we know if it's recommended or required? Do we?
Right now, it's required, and I apologize because that should have said required. Okay. Because I believe he said age 9 and above, I think is how he said it. So that, okay, instead of highly recommended, that should have been required.
So it is required right now. So it wouldn't matter if we did change the AB schedule based on face mask, it really wouldn't matter right now. Then,
well,
right?
It does at preschool to grade 2, because we've heard, as you read some of the emails tonight,
yep,
some parents want the children in preschool grades in K1 and 2 to wear masks also. So that might be a way to allow parents to shift from one group to the other based on that.
Perhaps when we send the survey out, we could not only get preference on option 1 and option 2, but for those that prefer option 1, we could also ask if we were to break up the ABs by face mask preference, in which group would you fall? And then we can look at it and see what our numbers look like to see if that's reasonable or not.
That's a great suggestion, yes. So I believe we need to put on here under grades 3 to 12, we need to put required, because that has changed since we put this plan together a week or 2 ago.
Are we ready for more?
All right, another question? Alice?
I have a parent asking if they choose to go virtual, but her child was being helped by a Title I teacher and it really benefited her child. Her child does not have an IEP though. I know I've had one of those kids too. Can she still be helped by that teacher? Maybe on Wednesdays when they have office hours?
I'm not quite sure about that. We might have to use our Title I teachers to reduce our class sizes. So we can't make those kind of promises because
Okay.
we might have to use them, like I said, to divide up our classrooms to make sure that they're small enough. So it may look completely different. You know, last year, yes, there was some pullout, there was a Title I teacher available. That teacher may be a homeroom teacher to reduce sizes.
Okay, and then another parent's asking if they choose virtual, but before COVID, their children were inter-district transfers, will they lose their spot at their chosen school if they choose virtual?
No, they won't lose their spot there.
Okay, good.
When they come back, is that what they're asking when they return? They wouldn't lose their spot.
Okay. And then there's a lot more.
All right, does anybody else have any other questions, or we could just continue with Alice's? Amber's got one.
I just noticed something about Ms. Dwyer's comment about the seats per classroom. I wanted to find out if maybe we could look into something like those sponge margin cushions that are easy to wipe down and sanitize. And each student could be given one in the classroom or could be left in the classroom. Maybe that's an accommodation we can make.
I don't think that Amber's able to see the plexiglass partitions here. Is that what she's asking?
No, Ms. Dwyer made a comment about having soft spaces for kids, for reading, for sitting on the floor. It's hard to sanitize and clean those cushions and carpeting areas, but I wanted to see if maybe we could look into the sponge flooring or the sponge individual cushions like they have the gardeners to kneel on. They're easy to wipe down and clean, and maybe that could be something we could accommodate.
Oh, certainly. We will try to work with the primary teachers, but I think everyone knows it's going to look differently. You know, when we've got that little rug in the middle of the classroom and you've got, 15 children rolling about on it, we just know that that cannot happen anymore. But we have to figure out a way to still make it a very loving environment for the youngest children. But that is a good suggestion.
All right, Alice, you have another question?
Oh, gosh, yes. Do we have any specifications for specials yet? We have one parent who has an idea that maybe just for 8 weeks, this group does only one special, so that special teacher only has to see like 1/3 of the school at a time. And for the next 8 weeks, they do the next.
I
don't know
believe
if
our
you
building
already-
principals are looking at that.
They're probably, okay. Some people have asked about all the extra spaces, and will you need tents for outside, to use outside spaces?
Well, I don't know if we're going to use tents, but I know Christina sent us all something she saw, some outdoor classroom-like furniture.
Oh.
That you could actually have an outdoor classroom, and we were looking at that for the various schools. But
That's
we're trying
very
to find a nice
interesting.
area to put them in. You know, PE certainly can be outside, and we are going to encourage that physical education be outside as much as possible unless there's, torrential rain. So I think, and we do need to have recess. Children need to be outside because honestly, it's the safest place to be. You know, we are looking at, for instance, in art classes, these kind of partitions. If you're going to be working at a table with other youngsters, this is a great way to separate students. And that's why we have the gentleman here tonight who has measured all of our various desks and tables in the district, trying to come up with a common size that we could buy these in bulk to make everyone feel safer, which is why I'm sitting in one to demonstrate, although it's getting hot with the sun beating down on me.
Right, hopefully the students won't have the sun
We'll be
beating
sitting
down
in the
on them.
sun like this.
I asked before the meeting, but we weren't on camera then, about the face shields, some people are asking, how many of those are there? Will there be enough for everybody? or
Thousands and
just
thousands and thousands of them.
Wow.
We have been ordering since June because
Wow.
we realized we had to get ahead of the game. In fact, we just ordered 6,000 rolls of paper towels today, just because, you know, in general, we ask parents, oh, send some paper towels and tissues in. Well, you know, at Kroger's, I haven't seen paper towels in over a month. So we have found a supplier. So anytime we find a supplier that has anything in stock, we have ordered it. So we have stockpiled massive amounts because we started in June.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, because we didn't know if
We
everybody
didn't know,
can have
so
them
we
or
thought
just
we better
for-
just order.
Awesome. Oh gosh, what's next? Some of these have already been answered.
So I have a comment. It's not really a question, but something I just want to make known to the public. Aware of this, but you know, there's a lot of concern about social distancing and, you know, the debate between the 3 foot and the 6 foot. And I just don't know if the district really realizes what our numbers actually are. So I thought maybe if we shared our current numbers and you can see what they are. So the recommendation for the pandemic is 12 to 15 per class. And pre-COVID, we were very close to that. So the average class size at Williams is 13, at Sharpsburg it's 18, at View it's 18, the middle school is 16, and the high school is 15. So I just want to point out that we're very close to these numbers already pre-COVID. So once some of the students choose option 2, you know, we're going to be very close to these numbers. So we certainly hear you. I hear you on the 3 foot and 6 foot, but I just want everybody to be aware of where we stand currently, and we're very close to that.
And that's a good point. And we'll be dividing those numbers into the AB group.
Yeah.
So they could easily be 6 to 12 in a classroom.
Yeah.
That's why we feel comfortable we can do the 6 feet if you only have 6 or 7 children in a classroom.
So, but that means that in the language that we have in our back to school plan, it's a minimum of 3 feet. Would it be wise to just add that we'll try to maximize social distancing? Like there may be some classes, some specific classes where that may be difficult. You know, maybe the most we can get is 5, just because of the setup of the class, right? But, you know, we'll try and maximize as much social distancing for the kids as much as possible, right? So keep the minimum 3 foot, but then, you know, we may want to look at adding a caveat that says that we will maximize social distancing.
That's in there, actually. It says maintain maximum physical distance from peers whenever possible.
There you go.
I just want to make sure the public realizes that we're very close to that pre-COVID.
So, and that's a very important point, because a lot of other districts in the state, and I'll get to Amber in just a second. A lot of other districts in the state that are quote unquote busting at the seams, right? So they typically have 25 to 30 kids in a class. They have to go to the AB schedule in order to get down to that 12 to 15 number. You know, we're very close to that without having to go to an AB schedule. And that's another reason why, you know, I feel comfortable with the orange level of staying, you know, going back at 5 days a week, because other school districts will have to do that to keep those lower numbers. And we'll already be, you know, very close to those lower numbers as is. So, Amber, you're up.
Thank you. I agree with you. We are very lucky that we have less student to teacher ratio in those districts. I think for the sake of the policy, because we have a lot of space, we should put a 4-foot rule. And that might be a nice compromise for some of our smaller classrooms, to just
4 feet.
have no less than a 4-foot minimum, but always try to do the 6 foot wherever possible, especially if we have to go to a 5-day-a-week plan and have a full class 5 days a week. I think our minimum should be higher because we can accommodate it more easily.
That's a well-taken point, and when we get to the point of actually making the tweaks to the plan, that could be one of the possible submotions. So just keep note of that.
Okay.
Any other questions about the plan for clarification?
I have a question.
Yes.
It's not directly about the plan, but I was wondering, do you know what the plan is as far as testing goes this year? I know in the spring it was kind of like just let go, and what that is going to look like this year and what it would be like for students that are doing Edgenuity.
We have not heard. I guess we'll find out when that third grade reading test for the fall comes up. That, I think, will be the first indication of what the state plans on doing with testing. They have not said anything yet. I know Christina and I were discussing it the other day. The state is very wedded to testing. I think it's going to be very hard for them to give up. So I think they will try. I think they will try to continue testing until it becomes just so unrealistic they'll have to back off. But we'll know we'll know by October if they're starting to send out the third grade guarantee testing.
I do have another question.
Go for it.
Alice was mentioning the programming ideas for specials, and I did have a parent reach out to me this week, and even a student reach out to me this week with questions about specifically music and plays and things like that. Obviously, we've made a lot of caveats for our sports teams to go back to normal, but we have yet to hear any plans for our arts programs and music programs. I noticed you were talking about the face shields, Mary. I think that could be a very wonderful tool for our students who have to sing, to maybe be able to wear those, and maybe an option for our musical or our play. Maybe we could incorporate a way for NCT to film them, and that way those students could still participate in these items without necessarily putting an audience at risk if there are restrictions. But I want to make sure that we aren't forgetting that part of the enrichment portion for our students. If we're focused on sports only, you're forgetting a lot of students.
No, I think that's an excellent point, and those are some very good ideas. The reason why it hasn't been mentioned is OHSAA is very active. They've been sending out guidance weekly. In fact, our AD is here that can give us the latest update. There isn't the same kind of organization for music and plays, so that's why you haven't heard a whole lot. So we're kind of having to forge our own way in that realm. The nice part about OHSAA, it's statewide. They send down the guidance, every district follows it, and it's just a lot more clear cut. And we're going to have to really just try to find our way when it comes to music and plays. And Alex, I didn't know if you wanted to say a few words. What is the latest from OHSAA since you are here?
Alex, has there been any direction as to actually having people attend events? I know they're allowing the students to participate, but what's the direction for
Right now, we haven't heard much. As far as I understand, or a max of 2,500. And whichever one is smaller, that's the one we have to go. So like for the gym, obviously, I don't know the exact numbers for the amount of people who can sit in the gym, so it'll be half of that.
Okay. I have a whole other host of questions regarding that as far as ingress and egress. Like how do we funnel people through something like that? I mean, because, you know, you just got masses of people coming in and out of games, and, you know, that concerns me how we can go about and getting people moved around for these events.
Thankfully, for all of the areas that we have, like our gym and football stadium, there are multiple entrances and exits, so we can, just like you've seen stores, put arrows around. We can have, there's, I believe, 2 outside doors from the gym that go out. That we can also use, and then as far as stadium, we have all the doors for the games that are on the entrance.
Okay. Anybody have any other questions for our athletic director?
I do.
Okay, go for it.
Alex, I'm having a little bit of trouble hearing you. The local is captioning. So my question for you is, are any of these guidelines flexible enough for us to potentially apply to our arts students? Would you be able to work with Mr. Robinson or band director, any of our arts teachers who work in music specifically, to modify some of these rulings to work with those students?
I believe so, and I've actually been in touch with Mr. Lockwood already the past few weeks, basically just shooting ideas back and forth and figuring out what things that he can use from the restart guidelines that we have as well. But I believe we can address anything in the sports guidelines for restart. I think that could be adjusted for all the minors as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for our athletic director? Nope. No. All right, thank you, Mr. Hines. So I know I brought up the topic of ingress and egress, and I think it's apt to kind of transition that a little bit to start thinking about ingress and egress of the school day. Now, for a lot of our buildings, I know for Sharpsburg, they're getting drop-off and pickup lanes that are being built to wrap around. The same is going to be done at the middle school for View, which will be attending in the East Wing. So in conversations that I've had previously, I've asked the administration to start thinking about actually putting together some videos that we can post on our website and on YouTube and with NCT to kind of simulate how we want drop-off and pick-up to look and to act. So that way our parents can view that and hopefully model how we want these events to happen. I know every year it's always crazy and hectic, and we end up getting, 50,000 calls and emails about how terrible drop-off and pickup is. And I think with these new additions that we're doing with our buildings, hopefully we'll make this a whole lot better, and we'll get that information out to the public about how we want drop-off and pickup to happen at the beginning of the school year. And that goes whether we're in school 5 days a week or that goes whether it's a blended schedule. It's going to be the same process. Any other questions for clarification?
I have 2 more areas of questions, so maybe I can lump each one's questions just into the area. People are asking about after and before care. Do we know anything about that and what that will look like?
I believe that they are still under the 9 student per classroom rule. So that is going to restrict the number of children we can have because they fall under the preschool/daycare rules.
Oh, we'll probably want to reiterate the preschool piece about the 9 children in the class. Some people were asking about that too, just to let them know again that it is
It's 9.
Yeah, 9 in each classroom. Also, they asked if preschool can do Edgenuity. Is there an Edgenuity?
I don't think so because
Okay.
you have to be able to read really to
And then-
follow along.
The other area is, they have a lot of questions about it, and it's what happens when someone tests positive, who gets quarantined, what about teachers, all that stuff, and how do we work with the health department? So if you want to just reiterate all that stuff again.
Well, in our conversations, this is with Hamilton County, because you know we're under Hamilton County and the Norwood Health Department. They wanted us to draw a 6-foot halo around the individual who tests positive. And if you have been in contact for 10 or 15 minutes within that 6-foot halo, those would be the individuals who would be quarantined. But realistically, I think we're looking at quarantining the entire class. You know, the 6 or 7 children who are in there, because I don't know how you figure that 6-foot halo out, because children get up and move, etc. So I would say it would be the entire class.
Yeah, and they're together 7 hours.
Exactly.
Every day.
But that's what that was the guidance. I mean, some of the guidance I think is just a little strange, you know, the 6-foot halo around someone. But yes, we'd be looking at the whole classroom. Yes.
How would that apply if a student within that radius has a sibling in another classroom? How far out does that sibling have to go to quarantine?
We would have to get guidance from the health department on that. Because I hate to misspeak when you start making up hypothetical scenarios. I could misspeak.
Any other questions regarding clarification of the plan?
I probably missed a lot. I'm sorry, public, but I'm trying. A lot.
Okay, so are there any changes or tweaks that anybody would like to make to the plan?
Why, yes. Is Amber saying yes too, or?
So Amber, you have, okay, so Amber, go for it. You've got the first submotion.
We're doing these one at a time, right?
We're doing them one at a time. One at a time.
Okay, so my first submotion, I guess, will be the establishing 4-foot minimum for our district rather than the recommended 3-foot minimum. I think it is a compromisable distance that we as a district can offer because of our spacing. For in-person learning, regardless of AB schedule or first-tier 5-day in-person. 6 foot where possible.
So the motion on the table is to change the minimum 3 foot to minimum of 4 foot while trying to maximize social distancing as possible. Is there a second for this motion? Anybody want to make this change? Is there a second?
If you second it, does it mean you're in favor of it, or you're
No.
just saying, hey, let's go ahead with this?
You can second a motion so that we can discuss it, and then you still vote the way that you want to vote.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, so the motion has been seconded. Is there any discussion on this motion? Go for it.
I just don't want to compromise on 6 feet. I really want 6 feet. I feel really strongly about the 6 feet.
I'm with Brandon on the fact that wherever possible, but we have to remember that in a couple of our classrooms, we may not be able to obtain that. But we also have to factor in it's 4 feet between desks, and the size of the desk will also add to that distance as well. And I would love to have 6 feet where possible, but I just don't want to risk a 3-foot minimum. I'm not comfortable with it.
I don't
feel that there's a ton of difference between 3 and 4. I don't, I don't think it's really worth a debate. So I could go for it either way, but again, I default to the numbers that I shared earlier. We are already so close to small class sizes to the recommended guidelines that I just don't, I don't think that it matters 3 feet or 4 feet. I don't have a strong preference.
I agree with Debbie. I don't think there's a big difference between 3 and 4 feet, and I think when you factor in things like the plexiglass shields being on desks, that personally makes me feel a lot more comfortable with the 3 feet versus 6 feet. I think that that's a really good barrier, especially with the addition of masks and things. I don't think an extra foot is making much of a difference one way or the other. And I think when it comes down to it, you're not possibly going to be able to monitor every student's distance from another student at every minute of the day. Are you going to like break out a measuring tape all the time, like, oh, 6 more inches away?
That's part of the reason, if you give them an extra foot to play with in the classroom when they want to lean over to their next neighbor or share information, if you've already established that the desks are at a minimum of 4 feet, they're even farther away from the start. Because kids are going to naturally just gravitate. So if you put them at 3 feet, it's like the speed limit. If you put it at 40, people are going to go 45. If we put it at 3, kids are going to go to 2. I'm just saying our established minimum should be slightly higher.
I think our establishment minimum should be 6, so.
Right. I think the way that the guide speaks now is that we're going to strive to maximize social distancing, right? So we're going to strive for at least 6 feet. But there may be situations where that can't be possible just because of the makeup of the class. Like you get into some of these science classes in the high school that have the benches in between, and it may be almost impossible to have a class and have 6 feet of spacing in order to conduct work and education in that building. Whereas, 4 feet, you could get, 8 to 10 kids in that class. So, and that's just one example. I'm okay with the 4 feet. I'm okay with the minimum of 3 feet, knowing that the district is going to maximize the social distancing where possible. I mean, I think this was brought up in a comment, over the past week, and where there was some confusion over this, where, people think this is only 3 feet. It's not only 3 feet. We're just setting a minimum standard while trying to maximize social distancing because we don't have cookie cutter style rooms, right? They're not all the same. I mean, we're talking about, 100-year-old buildings. So we have to keep that into effect. The one thing that is really working in our favor here is the fact that our numbers are where they are. And when you have the families that opt to choose option 2 for the virtual environment, it is going to help us continue to maximize some form of social distancing. So that's kind of where I sit on this. I'm okay with 4. I'm okay with 3.
Yeah.
I don't want to pigeonhole us to only 6.
And I think at some point too, we have to have faith in our teachers that they are doing the right thing. We don't have to, like Sally said, we don't have to force them to have a tape measure and pull it out. These teachers don't want to contract COVID. They don't want to shut everything down. So I just trust that our teachers are going to do what is doable with what they have at the time, with the space that they're given and the number of students that they have. And again, I'm indifferent on 3 versus 4. I'm indifferent.
Okay. Any other discussion on this motion?
Did we want to have principals tell us if they think that they would be too restricted if it was more feet?
Absolutely. We've got a couple here in the room.
Tina
So,
just walked out.
Mr. Miller, do you want to kind of weigh in here, your thoughts?
If we made it more restrictive, saying that it needs to be more feet than 3, would that cause a problem for spacing in your rooms?
Yeah, you got to speak up.
And then here comes Tina, so if she could say after too.
With our flag sizes, the numbers, the 3 versus 4 feet, I don't think that it might be.
Oh, you're good.
To repeat, as was said before, the difference between 3 and 4, I don't think that there would be that much difference with the class sizes.
What if it were 6? Would that be too much hardship for you guys?
To make it, to ensure that it was 6, it could be a little bit more difficult.
And Tina, did you want to say anything about it?
I'll agree with them. We have very similar class sizes and situations. But of course, if we run an AB situation, that is much more doable to keep it at 6 regardless. But
And if we said 3 or 4?
What we did discuss though was very accurate. If you've been in our science classrooms, we have lab tables. So he is correct. That is going to be a challenge to be 6 feet at a table that is not 6 feet in width. So it is a challenge.
Right, we're making this rule district-wide. So I think we have to take into account, some of the challenges that we may have in certain situations. So I think what really rings relevant for me is the fact that as a district, we are going to maximize social distancing. So we're not saying it's only 3 feet or it's only 4 feet. We're going to say we want to maximize it, but in those situations where it's just not possible, we're not hamstringing ourselves, right? We're not shooting ourselves in the foot to where we can't have a class in that room because we can't maintain 6 feet. And that's what I want to keep us from putting ourselves into that situation of doing.
That makes a difference.
All right.
Because I was going to say, in real life, we're keeping 6 feet, and still when I'm going out to the grocery store, or we tried to go to Kings Island one day and did not last very long at all, because everyone's supposed to keep 6 feet, and someone else came right up behind me, bam, touched me. In normal world, this is not a big deal, but in COVID world, I'm like, you're supposed to be staying 6 feet, and okay, I'd understand if you got too close, but you got so close that, you went down to 0. So that's where I'm like, I want as much as possible. But their viewpoints are very important about how classes are arranged.
And remember, we are buying all these plexiglass shields, so I think that makes a difference too.
As long as the kids keep their heads inside, right?
Yes.
And as long as they're not doing this, which is what you know they're going to do.
Mary, I'm assuming from the desks that are set up over there, these plexiglass things would be in use at elementary as well as middle and high school, correct?
Yes. We've worked hard to find one that fits the high school desk.
Yeah.
That's been very tricky, just because there's those armchair desks that are hard to slide in and out of.
Right. But just to clarify, this is going to be in use at all of the levels, not just at...
Yes.
Yep.
All right, so the motion on the sub-motion on the floor right now by Mrs. Ballard is to change the language in our plan to read a minimum of 4 feet while still trying to maximize social distancing. Please call the roll.
Mrs. Howard?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard? Mrs. Rayburn?
Yes.
Mrs. Burke?
Yes.
All right, with all members voting aye, the motion passes and we will change the language in the plan to read minimum of 4 feet, while still trying to maximize social distancing. I want to make sure everybody's clear of that. It's not only 4 feet. We are going to try and maximize social distancing.
I would say too, if I can add, it will be a very good education piece, both for teachers to students and parents to their children, to kind of discuss personal space, you know, kind of the idea of when you're at school, you know, don't stay close to your friends, don't, you know, kind of leave some space between, just so that students can start to have that as a normal, like, expectation, and not to, you know, my kids want to hug their friends all the time. So I think that'll be a learning curve for everyone as well, but I mean, I think that's a good education point on it, to not only rely on distance and barriers, but to teach the kids that that's important as well.
And maybe they will use yardsticks. I know I used to have to lead tours at a museum, and I used to have to give a big talk about, because we had to stay away from the art that far. And the kids kept going right up to the art and saying, "I'm not touching it." So then I had to get out yardsticks and keep the yardstick and be like, "Well, are you this far away?" So maybe we will use yardsticks as an everyday prop.
Good point. Are there any other tweaks or changes that we would like to make to the plan as presented? So since you had the last one, I'm going to defer to Alice real quick and then come back to you. Okay.
Okay, we have a lot of emails and a lot of comments asking us to include the orange level in the AB plan. So I would like to make a motion that the orange level and the red level be the AB plan, whereas yellow is 5 days and purple virtual. Add the orange to the red.
So the motion on the floor is to include the orange level 2 into our blended learning classification. Have level 1 be 5 days in person, levels 2 and 3 be AB blended learning, and level 4 be remote learning. Is there a second to this motion?
Second.
All right, so we have a second. Is there a discussion on this?
I have a question. This was also on my list of moves, but I wanted to double check, since this question came up in one of the parent emails. What type of downtime would there be if we had to switch levels? So if we had to switch from tier 1 to tier 2 or 3, what type of timeline would we have for teachers to switch students to that model?
We were thinking, well, it really depends. So if we have to switch on a Monday, we would probably say, let's wait a week to the following Monday. If something happened on a Friday, we may not be able to move over the weekend, and we may have to say it should be the following Monday. So I think it's difficult to put a timeline in a plan that this may not happen for 3 or 4 months from now, and all of us will be looking back trying to figure out what did we say. It's probably more realistic to see when it occurs, or if it occurs on a Wednesday, can we make the change by the following Monday, and then really communicate and do robocalls before we make any kind of switch, because it's hard to say. I think you need a week, but from a Monday to a Monday, you could probably do it, but certainly not if it happens on a Friday afternoon. I don't think by the following 3 days from now, you could be ready to go. So I think that's something that would have to be communicated, and we'd have to look at the situation. You know, I think we're in such a fluid situation. All I can say is everything we've put down in the every day, we have to go back and change something. It has just gotten to be so fluid. I mean, if you wish to do that, that's fine, but honestly, I have no doubt that when this thing occurs, we'll be changing whatever we put down, just because of the circumstance surrounding it.
Well, and Mary, might it depend on which way we're going? So,
exactly.
Yeah, if we're on a level 4, we probably can't just jump back to school the next day because it went back down to a 3.
Exactly.
But if we're at a level 3 and it goes worse, then
You would just shut down within 24 hours. Exactly. So it depends on which way you're going.
yeah.
Well, as long as we have something in place that allows parents time to check in with their work schedules and make adjustments appropriately, because obviously an overnight change, or like you said, even from a Friday to a Monday, may not give parents enough time to put in a request for change of schedule.
Except if it's like Board Member Cole said, if the governor goes from red to purple, we might have to do that in a 24-hour time period, because that may be, he may say, at midnight tonight or 6 o'clock tonight or whatever.
I feel like we've been preparing for it so much that if it had to happen in 24 hours, we're pretty much ready, except for parents having to figure out daycare plans. But even when it does turn purple, like right now, we're on the verge of turning purple, and so everyone knows it's coming. And so it's actually, we've been watching DeWine, and he's been warning us. But I also wanted to reiterate that when Brandon first came up with this plan, that we've put in there that they stay at the higher threat level for 4 weeks, so that there is no, like, oh, we're back to this other color. No, you have 4 weeks to prepare to go back to the lower color.
That is correct.
So, and probably people don't always hear that, or they forget that, so we'll say it a lot of times. 4 weeks to stay at a level.
Is that what we are? Are we 4 weeks at a level? Or?
Right?
That's what I proposed. I proposed that when we move from a lower level to a more severe level, that we're at that more severe level for a period of 4 weeks.
Oh, at the more severe level.
At the more severe level.
Okay, I agree, yeah.
So you don't jump.
Right. So like, we're in school for a week, and then we go to purple, right? And then, so we're in purple for 4 weeks, but, week number 2, the county shifts back to the red. We're going to stay purple for 4 weeks.
Is that 4 weeks from the day we went into it, or 4 days from the shift of the county?
So 4 weeks from the day that we went into it is what I would recommend. And then at the end of the 4 weeks, if the county alert level is a different color, then we revert back to whatever it is at that period of time. But, the reason why I suggest that is because I'm thinking about our staff, and having to constantly switch from one to another can create some difficulties with consistency. So at least having a few weeks knowing that you're going to be at this one level or that one level, kind of gives a little bit of consistency. Now, everyone's free to disagree with me, but that's kind of where my head's at with it.
And it helps for parents preparing for what their situation's going to be of working, staying home, finding somewhere for their child to be. Hopefully people start making those network connections now of, this is my family that my kid can go to when I'm at work, their kids can come to my house when they're at work.
Right.
Start making those network connections.
Any other? Yeah, go ahead, Amber.
Along the line of that, as just said, there has been a question of creating an online support group for the parents who are homeschooling through Edgenuity, and I think that would be a good place to implement something like that. Is can the district create a group for those parents, and even for parents who might be on the AB schedule, we could create an A group who might need to resource for parents to help with watching their children, or a B group who needs help watching their children during those times. If that's something we could fit in there and facilitate.
I think that would be a different motion altogether, because right now we're just, so keep that in mind, because that may be something you want to bring back up here in a minute.
Okay.
might be something that's already included in Ingenuity too.
Right, it may already be included in Ingenuity, but let's focus on the current motion, which is whether or not level 2 should be blended learning. I want to give my thoughts,
I just had a comment about what we were just talking about in terms of how long we stay.
Yeah.
So what if we go to purple and we're at purple for 6 weeks? Like the county's purple for 6 weeks.
It's 4 weeks, and then at the end of the 4 weeks, we reevaluate it. And if we're still purple at the end of the 4 weeks, it's another 4 weeks.
So then we're 8.
So then we're 8. And if the county goes back to red at week number 6, we're going to stay at the more severe level for another 2 weeks. So it's a 4-week evaluation period. That makes sense to you?
Yes.
Okay.
I think 4 weeks is maybe a little on the long side, considering we were talking about how sometimes it can take, well, I guess when you're going up, it wouldn't take a full week, but
Right.
I don't know. I feel like I don't know because we haven't seen any counties turn purple.
Right.
And like if there are counties turning purple and then turning back orange the next week, and if that's kind of, or, back to red.
Well, I tell you what, if a county's going from purple to orange.
That's not what I meant. I meant
Wow.
red. Sorry.
Wow.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's good to err on the side of extra time, but.
Again.
Work schedules are given a month at a time.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think similarly, some parents might struggle. I mean, absolutely it's good to be able to plan ahead for 4 weeks, but if you're struggling with your kids being home for 4 weeks and finding childcare for 4 solid weeks of, them being at home all the time, that might be more of a hardship for them than, doing 2 weeks or 3 weeks, but.
Through all of this, there are, with this entire plan, there's no easy decisions here.
No.
And there's probably not going to be a perfect solution to anything. It's all going to be a matter of compromise. But, as I stated in my opening statement, I mean, the great thing about Norwood is, Norwood rallies around. I mean, once we know a direction, one of the great things about Norwood is we rally around and we figure it out and we get the job done. And yes, some of the decisions that we make here tonight, some parents are going to struggle with because of their personal situation, but man, we're going to get through it. At the end of the day, we're all going to get through it. I do want to make a comment relevant to this motion. So a lot of districts in the state that are looking at doing the level 2 as a blended option are districts that are much larger than ours, and that if they go to 5 days, everybody in school, they're at that 25 to 30 people per class, right? What makes it better for us is that we don't have those numbers. We have the ability to have those smaller class sizes. So, where we may have everybody, we may go to level 2, it'd be fantastic if the numbers go down and we get to orange, right, and the plan is passed as is, and everybody's in school 5 days a week with some sense of normalcy. We are going to have the same numbers as a lot of other districts are going to have to do with blended learning, right? That puts us in a much better situation. It puts us in a much better situation for the kids. It puts us in a much better situation for the parents. I mean, from the mental aspect, from the education aspect, from every aspect, that's the way to do it because we have the numbers to do it. So I would encourage everybody to keep it the way it is. If it gets to orange, or you only need 2 indicators on the state guides to trigger an orange event. Some of these indicators are really hard to track, right? So some of the numbers are easy to get and monitor, but some of these numbers, are really hard to kind of take a deep dive into to figure out how they're calculated. But only having 2 of those indicators trigger us to go into blended learning when we have the ability and the small class sizes to put kids in class. I think that's the way to go.
I have a comment along that line. We do have a lot of space, and that's a plus. We also have a lot of parents who are still nervous about a full classroom, even though we have smaller class sizes than most districts. But I also want to offer our parents a little bit more stability for their future planning. And if 2 and 3 are the same, then we are going to be bouncing back between red and orange for quite some time. There's going to be more continuity in learning than us going from a 5-tier model to an AB model to a 5-tier model to an AB model. If those two are so close, then I see us bouncing between them. And that inconsistency is not going to be favorable for our families who have scheduling needs.
That is a well-taken point. I will counter that with my opinion. If you look at the county indicator map, it is really driven by population density. And with Hamilton County being an urban county, I don't think we see orange until well after some sort of vaccine program has been implemented. I think we'll be at red for the foreseeable future. I hope that's not the case. I hope I'm wrong. But I think that just because of population density, I think that's where we're going to be. So I don't think we're going to be switching back and forth between orange and red. I think we're going to be solid red until they get some sort of vaccine program implemented. But that's my opinion.
But if we start to see some improvement in our population density, then we suddenly go back to a five-day-a-week program. We're not helping that population density stay down. We need it to stay orange for quite some time. So being consistent between red and orange makes more sense than orange to yellow.
All right, any other discussion on this?
Yes. So we're going to be down when building also. So we're going to be a bit more crowded than we usually are. We're not even going to have Norwood view at all.
Actually, that's a misnomer because we had that extra space in the middle school anyway that was being unused. So being down a building doesn't really change our student density per class.
Well, it still makes me nervous. It's
That's
still fine. People with other people when they wouldn't have been. And then, you know, if it were up to me and I had my dream plan, the kids would be as far apart as we are. And whatever I can do to get those kids farther apart and the teachers, I will do it. I don't care if there's only 2 kids in the class. I want them as far apart as possible.
Any other discussion on this item? So the motion on the table is to change the plan to have level 2 be blended learning. So that's the motion on the table. So if you're voting yes for this, you're voting to change the plan for level 2 to be blended learning, the same as level 3. Please call the roll.
Mr. Allen?
No.
Mrs. Cole?
No.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Mrs. Raber?
No.
Mrs. Rarick?
Yes.
Right, with a vote of 3 to 2, level 2 stays with 5-person in person. If we ever get to orange, we will be in class 5 days. Any other changes and tweaks that we want to make to the plan?
Yes.
Go for it.
I would like to move that we push our start date back to September 8th, day after the holiday, to give us a little bit more time to see what the county numbers are going to look like, and be able to give ourselves a bigger cushion on creating our AB student list and arranging our teachers through Edgenuity and our in-person learning.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to push our start date back to after Labor Day, correct?
Yes.
Is there a second for this motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second by Mrs. Rarica. Any discussion on moving the start date back to after Labor Day?
I do have a question. Then will we be looking at moving the close of school from May 28th through the makeup days of June 7th? And would that require eliminating spring recess? Because we would have to pick up those days. So this will cause a revision in the calendar.
So I've seen several districts moving this school year to holiday to holiday. And I would be for that model here. And I think giving us an extra week at this point to follow along with the Hamilton County guidelines and see where those numbers are going is probably not a bad idea with the recent uptick and threat of becoming purple.
So we're essentially looking at a 2-week difference. What do we think would happen in that 2 weeks that can't happen before August 24th?
Numbers can drop. Or numbers can increase.
Or they can increase.
But what's to stop them from 2 more weeks or like numbers are gonna go up or down all the time. I don't think 2 weeks is going to change much one way or the other.
So what I would want to know, I would prefer us to not start later, but if Mary and principals said that they needed the time, I'd give them whatever they want. But if you don't need the time, I don't want to start late.
Are we allowed to do that? I see 4 principals, I think. Do you feel yes or no that you need this extra 2 weeks, or?
Go for it.
Yeah.
I do not, I'm sorry, do I need to get up to the...
Mrs. Akers, you said you do not?
Okay.
I don't know if the people at home can hear you though.
I do not think that a 2-week shift would benefit us in any way because we have been working really hard already in our planning. So I don't think that shift would benefit us at this time.
I would completely concur.
Mr. Gabbard,
No, I mean, Mr. Gabbard is
Mr. Gabbard's going to say something.
Yeah, hold on, Amber.
We also have the situation of the students coming back when they're supposed to be coming back as scheduled. If they come back at that time, we have more time to work with them before the flu season would come in October and November. So it gives us more time to work with the students.
Thank you.
I have seen this be on a plan for other districts, including one similarly sized, but if our district is prepared, then I am totally okay with removing that motion.
Mrs. Booth, do you have anything to add?
I would just like to say that the staff, the administrators, we've been working tirelessly all summer long, and we are prepared. We have things in place that would certainly dictate to an August 24th start date. So I'm going to be a proponent for bringing the children back as soon as possible.
It's been the least restful summer ever.
All right, so Amber is withdrawing her motion. Alice, are you okay with withdrawing your second?
Oh, yes, yes.
Okay, so with the motion withdrawn and the second withdrawn, that is off the table. Are there any other changes or modifications to the plan that we need to look at?
I feel like everything else is just in process, will be figured out stuff, not...
So I think you bring up a good point, and I have a request to the administration. Hopefully this is something, I know the sun is
starting to become a problem.
Yeah. So I think the interaction that we got from our parents and community members, they asked some really good questions. Like there was, I don't think I saw a question or somebody sent an email or, messaged me on, whatever. Nobody asked a question that was completely in left field. I mean, everything was really thoughtful, and you can tell that the community really did their homework to make sure that they were kept up to speed with what was going on here, and I think that's fantastic. My request to the administration is that we take all of those questions and we compile like an FAQ, frequently asked question, and have some document that we can provide to the community that takes into account all of those really thoughtful questions. What that does is that helps us board members from having to contact people individually, right? Like we'd have to bother you or you or you. I'm happy to do it, but if we could have the administration take those questions, distill them down to a frequently asked question document answer sheet that, we can then provide to the community.
Awesome. Who should I give these to? And I must say, a parent helped me find all the questions that were all over social media and get these together. And it's been kind of amazing finding the talent in our parents. This parent who's sitting out there in the audience has a master's in school policy. Who would know? Like, wow. Thank you, parents.
Yeah, I think Norwood as a community is blessed with just talented people all around. Before we move to a vote on this, if there are no other changes or modifications to the plan as is, I just want to reiterate, none of these decisions are easy. There are no perfect answers here. Whenever we vote on this, if the plan is passed, it's not going to make everybody happy. And we have to be comfortable with that. And we have to be okay with that. That doesn't mean we have to be happy about it, right? But I think more importantly is we have to give our community and we have to give our district some direction that we can plot a path forward so we can get through this pandemic to a point to where there is a vaccine program, we can get it implemented the best way possible and get back to some sense of normalcy. So what we're discussing now is in the long-term thinking, we're thinking about short-term solutions. So, because the end game is to get back to business as usual. Does anybody have any other final comments before we go to a vote? So the motion, the super motion on when we started this whole discussion was to adopt the back to school plan as presented. We did make a number of motions to make some tweaks to those plans, and those will be documented and implemented with this vote, so we don't have to do anything else with it. So a yes vote will be to adopt the plan. A no vote would be to not adopt the plan. Please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Mrs. Raymer?
Yes.
Mrs. Rare?
Yes.
With all members present voting aye, the motion carries, and we have adopted our back to school plan with the direction for the district. Next item on the agenda is adjournment.
I'll motion.
We have a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Rayburn. Please call the roll. Hold on.
Hang on.
Hold on.
So when Alice mentioned before that we had additional things that may not be sub-motions to the actual plan, where do we mention those? Like ideas and suggestions for things that need to be done?
Do we give them to somebody?
So this plan, I consider as a living document, and it will be tweaked as we go along. Situations arise, and we're going to have to figure out that some things work better than other things. So if there are suggestions, and I'm always a proponent of if there's a better way to do it, let's discuss it, right? Let's figure out a way to do it the best way possible. So if it comes up that there's a better way to do things, let's definitely keep this a living document and open to change.
This isn't exactly like part of the actual document, this is stuff that we would implement. Like I wanted to make sure that we had plans regarding water bottle, filling stations in the building. I know we had a couple. I wanted to follow up with that.
You're entirely correct. You're entirely correct. You did mention. So Amber's really concerned about, because kids are going to bring their own water bottles, that we have enough filling stations in the buildings to be able to accommodate kids filling up their own water bottles. I think this fits perfectly in with our permanent improvement plan, and as long as the board is okay with it's almost like a change order at this point, right? So all we have to do is figure out what the cost is for making the change of the filling stations to the buildings, and if it's under a certain amount, if it's under $25,000 or $50,000, that's something that the administration could do on their own. If it's over a certain amount, it would come to us for a vote in order to make that kind of a change order. Am I correct, Mrs. Camphouse?
Yes, you are.
Okay. So I think it's a fantastic idea. Does anybody else feel differently about changing our stations over to water fillers?
So really, we're retrofitting our water fountains to also be the bottle fillers.
Correct.
And I'm sure we can do that in many cases.
Okay.
There might be one or two that we wouldn't be able to do, but we will work with our facilities person, Mr. Peter back there, to do that.
Was that something we'll be able to hear about in next week's meeting?
Now, just to be clear, we may not have this done in 2 weeks' time. I just wanted to...
I just need the information portion.
Yeah, I think I got a thumbs up from somebody. Yeah. So I think we can put that on the agenda to kind of look at for next week's meeting.
And then the other follow-up I wanted to do, which didn't have to do with the actual motion, was asking about the testing for teachers. Could that be something that we agreed to do as testing at the beginning and working with our health department to do that in a regular interval?
I have a feeling that that falls under the collective bargaining agreement, and I believe that we would have to negotiate that with our bargaining units. A board policy mandating that, I would imagine, would be litigated.
Is that something we can follow up with? I just want to make sure our teachers feel safe coming back as well as our students.
I will certainly ask our various association presidents what they're feeling, and I'll be glad to follow up. But I just want to be clear, I think a board policy that does not discuss these kind of health or testing issues with your collective bargaining groups will lead to litigation.
Okay, that was all the other stuff I had. I didn't follow the motion.
Perfect.
Thank you.
All right. So now we're back to adjournment.
You want me to motion again?
Go ahead.
Motion and second.
What's that?
So we have a motion and a
motion.
second. We have a motion and a second on the table. Please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Mrs. Raker?
Yes.
Mrs. Rare?
Yes.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.